Well, it's time for another Prepper Potpourri rant. And if you notice, my voice might sound a bit different. It's because this weekend I got the crud. Now, technically they call it bronchitis, but I just call it the crud. So, actually, I'm feeling pretty good except for the coughing repeatedly. But it has affected my voice, so bear with me. Well, I think most of you probably saw the news article last week. It was about that 13-year-old middle schooler. She was attending a middle school in Kansas City, and a boy in her classroom asked the question, what 5 people would you kill in this class? And instead of answering verbally, she used the finger gun gesture and actually pointed at 4 different individuals and then used that finger and pointed at herself. Well, the next day somebody complained, one of those that was pointed at, feeling that they were being bullied, and lo and behold, she is cuffed and taken out of the school by police and charged with a felony. Now that's right, a felony. You know, when I think of a felony, I think of, murder, rape, arson, possession of narcotics, those type of things. I do not think of a hand gesture as a felony. But what I wasn't understanding was it wasn't really the hand gesture. It is the intent and being perceived as a criminal threat. Excuse me. Now, a criminal threat could be made in a written form. You know, it could be a letter, a text, email, or it could be verbal. But it also can be nonverbal. That is a gesture. Now, in some states, only the written and the verbal threats are considered to be criminal threats. In California, there was a case that came up where a gentleman, I don't think he was a gentleman because of what he did. Anyway, he saw an off-duty policeman at the restaurant, and he pointed his finger gun at that policeman, and they charged him. Well, it went all the way up the system to the California Supreme Court, and they decided that, well, let me read it for you. It said the California Supreme Court rules that gestures do not violate California Penal Code Section 422, which prohibits the making of criminal threats of harm or death. Believe it or not, one of the most lenient states that I can think of. If she would have done it in that state, she wouldn't have been charged with a felony. She could have still been in deep trouble at school, however. What makes this even more amazing? A month before, same city, Kansas City, 2 13-year-old boys were caught with guns stashed in their backpacks at school. Now, they were charged with a misdemeanor, not a felony. And I guess this was based on intent. According to the principal at the school, they had no intent of using these weapons at school. Well, how comforting. But who knows if that would be the truth or not. But that's a misdemeanor. Finger gestures, an actual felony. Doesn't make sense, does it? So I have always had a problem with the zero tolerance policy. And I'll give you an example, again, with hand gestures. I believe it was in Nebraska. There was a 3-year-old that was attending preschool, and he used SEE sign language instead of American Sign Language. And the symbol for his name actually looked like a gun. So the administration's told the parents, you're going to have to change your child's name because we just cannot have that symbol at school. We have zero tolerance. He was using accepted SEE signs for his name, and he was told he'd have to change it. Well, it didn't set well with the parents, and very glad to hear that they won their fight, and the school did not make them change their child's name. But I mean, how ridiculous is that? Oh, I had to get a drink here in between. Now, on behalf of the schools, and with finger gestures and guns, I understand how careful they have to be. I mean, as a parent, it's scary probably sending your kids to school nowadays. I mean, when my kids went to school, there wasn't any massacres occurring in schools. The only thing that seemed to be occurring was a lot of bomb threats that were fake, so the kids could get out of school. Another story completely. But I understand why they have to be careful. They would be deeply criticized, like in every single shooting incident at school, they went back and tried to fault administration, fault police, because, they did have a report before, or other people thought this child, or student, I should say, looked suspicious and did suspicious activity. Well, in this case, pointing a finger gun at other classmates, definitely not a good sign. And I have no problem with them handling it and having that child go for counseling. And, I thought, my gosh, she also pointed at herself. Should be worried about depression and suicide? I don't know. It's a possibility. And I also thought the boy that asked her that question should have gotten deep problem. That little instigator caused all of this. But should she have had a felony? No. I mean, a felony would mean that maybe someday if she wanted to be in the military, she couldn't get in. It could, even though your records are closed, certain colleges and military can still see a juvenile record. So I don't think a felony was appropriate. Well, the judge, when they looked at this case, didn't think so either, and as long as she went through a court-appointed program, she would be fine. But what does this tell us about today's society? One of the things I thought is, but some people call the crybaby generation, has this zero school policy kind of enforced that. I mean, not really explaining that there's a difference between a toddler protected butter knife and a switchblade. In both cases, you get expelled. When you treat each threat equally, you aren't teaching that there is levels of difference. And you also aren't teaching kids to basically grow a harder skin and accept that sometimes things aren't fair. And to me, that's what I always told my kids. Who told you life was fair? It's not. What you have to teach your kids is how to deal with it. But again, different matter. But I did look a little bit more into these hand gestures because I thought, this is interesting. I have to admit, there's one hand gesture that I do use. When I'm in the car and somebody pulls right in front of me or does something else very aggravating, I sometimes use the finger hand gesture at the window out at that car. Now, my husband always says, don't do that. You got to be scared of road rage. But I thought, oh my God, maybe it's more than that. Maybe I could get arrested. But luckily, another woman in Michigan actually used that finger gesture at a cop who had just given her a speeding ticket. Now, I would never do this to law enforcement. It's not prudent, plus I generally respect law enforcement. But she did. And she said she had her First Amendment right to wheel her finger at anybody she wanted. Well, I went through a layer of courts, and this was the judgment. The U.S. Court of Appeals agreed, and here is quote, Fits of rudeness or lack of gratitude may violate the golden rule, wrote the judge, but that doesn't make them illegal or, for that matter, punishable. Whew. I'm okay when I'm rude with that finger gesture. But lately there's been another finger gesture in the news. A child was at Universal Studios and having her picture taken with one of their characters. And lo and behold, well, let me show you the picture. Yeah, what I knew as the OK symbol is now being used as a white supremacy symbol. I did not realize that. And one of the things people try to do, I guess, is photobomb, get that symbol where least expected, and then post it as a gag or joke online. Well, if you'll notice, it might be kind of hard from that picture, but the little girl, who's the signals on her shoulder, she is biracial. So, hate crime, that person was terminated. I completely agree with it. Well, then also this year there was a Cub fan. Well, let me show you the picture. Yep, there's a Cub fan. You can't see his face, but he is using that, what I used to call the OK gesture, behind a black newscaster. And you know what? There's no reason to use that OK in that case. Again, you look into this and it could be more of a hate gesture. In his case, he was banned from Wrigley Stadium forever. So now you gotta be careful when you're using the OK gesture. So I guess the bottom line here is be very careful when you're gesturing with your hands. You know, I don't know, I'm not Italian, but you would think I would because I do gesture with my hands a lot. But be careful what you're gesturing, because who knew what such a powerful weapon was right at our fingertips. This is Prepper Potpourri saying thank you for listening to my rant. I appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts below. As always, please subscribe, share the knowledge, and click that little bell below for notifications of future videos. And hopefully next time you hear my voice, it'll be back to normal. Thank you.